Beneath the surface of your waking thoughts, deeper than the sentences you string together in the daylight, and older than the conscious you that believes it is in charge, lies the machinery of the subconscious mind. This hidden system has been called many names across history: the unconscious, the silent governor, the shadow self, the primal brain. It does not speak in words, yet it dictates the patterns that words will later take. It does not need permission, yet it decides how you breathe, how you walk, how you flinch when someone raises their voice, how you reach for sugar when you are tired. Modern neuroscience estimates that up to 95% of all behavior, thoughts, and emotional responses are driven by processes that operate below the threshold of conscious awareness. Imagine an iceberg drifting across the ocean. What glitters in the sunlight is the conscious mind, the decisions you think you are making. But beneath the waves, massive and invisible, is the rest of the structure. The subconscious, guiding the drift, resisting sudden change, storing everything you have ever experienced. To understand why life runs on autopilot is to understand how that submerged structure works. The subconscious is a vast storage system, built from repetition and survival. Every moment you experience is cataloged, whether you are aware of it or not. When you were a child, you learned to walk not by analyzing the physics of balance, but by falling hundreds of times until the body memorized the rhythm. When you first drove a car, every movement was clumsy, checking mirrors, adjusting pedals, shifting gears. Now, after repetition, you can arrive at your destination without remembering the act of driving. You can carry on a conversation while navigating busy streets. Conscious effort became unnecessary because the subconscious created an automated program, a shortcut. These shortcuts are the foundation of survival. Imagine if every morning you had to relearn how to tie your shoes, brush your teeth, or interpret the meaning of a door handle. Life would collapse under the weight of decision-making. The subconscious frees the conscious mind for novelty by handling the predictable. Yet this gift has a hidden cost. Not only motor skills and habits are automated, but emotional reactions, self-beliefs, and patterns of thought also become subconscious. You were not born with a fear of speaking in public, but if enough experiences of embarrassment, rejection, or criticism became embedded, the subconscious encoded those associations. Now, whenever you stand before a crowd, your body reacts automatically. Faster heartbeat, dry mouth, sweaty palms, before your conscious reasoning can intervene. At its core, the subconscious mind is pattern-based. It learns through association. If event A is paired often enough with event B, the subconscious assumes they are linked. This is why the smell of a particular perfume can trigger childhood memories, or why a song from adolescence can stir emotions you thought were forgotten. Associations are stacked upon associations, a labyrinth of connections that shape how you interpret the world without deliberate thought. You may believe you dislike someone because of their behavior, but often you dislike them because their voice resembles someone from your past who hurt you. The subconscious does not distinguish between similar stimuli. It reacts as if old wounds are present again. To understand why 95% of your life is driven from below, you must see how little attention the conscious mind can truly maintain. The brain receives millions of bits of sensory input every second. Light frequencies, sound vibrations, tactile sensations, chemical signals. The conscious mind, however, can process only a tiny fraction at once. Psychologists estimate that conscious attention is limited to perhaps 40 to 50 bits of information per second. The rest is filtered, processed, and stored automatically. If you walk through a crowded street, you may notice one or two faces, a sound, a smell. But your subconscious is scanning every movement, every potential threat, every pattern of familiarity. It is constantly deciding what is worth noticing and what is safe to ignore. The result is that most decisions are not truly decided by you in the moment. The subconscious already shaped the options long before your rational mind appears. When you reach for coffee instead of tea, when you speak in a tone of defensiveness rather than curiosity, when you instinctively cross your arms while speaking to authority, These actions emerge from programming that was laid down years ago, often before you had any choice in the matter. Childhood conditioning, cultural environment, family dynamics, repeated trauma, repeated pleasure, all of it weaves into the silent code that runs your life. Consider language itself. You do not consciously analyze grammar rules while speaking. Your subconscious has built a library of patterns so refined that you form sentences effortlessly, correcting mistakes in real time without ever consulting a mental rulebook. Or consider walking down a flight of stairs. Your body automatically calculates angles, balance, and momentum with precision faster than any conscious calculation could manage. The subconscious is not a crude system. It is an elegant computational network, orchestrating millions of operations in parallel, silently, seamlessly. But this silent governor is not neutral. It is biased toward the past, toward repetition, toward whatever has been experienced most often. If your subconscious absorbed years of scarcity, it will act as if scarcity is natural, guiding your choices toward limitation. If it absorbed years of criticism, it will replay criticism as your inner voice, whispering that you are unworthy or incapable. The autopilot is not inherently wise, it is efficient. It will preserve whatever you have fed it, whether it is truth or distortion. And so much of human suffering arises not from conscious intention, but from subconscious programming that was never questioned. This is why affirmations, visualization, and habit change practices exist. They attempt to overwrite the silent code. Repetition is the language of the subconscious. Just as repeated trauma can carve pathways of fear, repeated positive rehearsal can carve new pathways of confidence. The challenge is that conscious willpower alone rarely penetrates deep enough. You can tell yourself, "I am confident," 1,000 times, but if your subconscious has stored 10,000 moments of shame, the autopilot will resist. Change requires consistent, emotional embodied practice, enough intensity to compete with the old programming. The paradox of the subconscious is that while it dominates behavior, it cannot be addressed directly. You cannot order your subconscious to erase a fear or adopt a new identity. Instead, you must create conditions where it learns through repetition, association, and emotional impact. Meditation, hypnosis, visualization, and ritual are methods designed to bypass the critical conscious mind, allowing suggestions to seep into the deeper system. Even storytelling, myth, and art can rewire the subconscious because they operate on symbols, the language the subconscious naturally understands. This is why dreams often seem nonsensical to the waking mind, but meaningful to the subconscious. In dreams, your mind rearranges symbols, emotions, and fragments of experience without logical order, yet the emotional impact is undeniable. The subconscious does not care about linear reasoning. It cares about imagery, feeling, rhythm. To work with the subconscious is to work with the languages of metaphor, repetition, and sensory intensity. At every moment, this vast hidden system runs beneath you, guiding the body, filtering reality, shaping identity. You are both its master and its servant, but most of the time, you remain unaware of its influence. To awaken to its presence is not to abolish autopilot, but to reclaim the right to reprogram it, to ensure the automation serves your higher aims rather than repeating old limitations. The idea that 95% of life is driven by subconscious processes is not an exaggeration. It is an acknowledgement of how the brain has evolved for efficiency. If you analyze the biology, the conscious mind is a thin film of awareness layered atop ancient neural structures. Beneath the neocortex, where reasoning resides, are the limbic systems and brainstem networks that regulate emotion, survival, and habit. These older systems are far faster than conscious thought, and in an evolutionary context, speed meant survival. When a predator appeared, there was no time to debate options. The subconscious pattern recognition system triggered adrenaline, increased heart rate, sharpened vision, and initiated flight. The conscious mind might later justify the decision, but the body had already chosen. Even in modern life, these reflexes persist. Someone insults you, and before you construct a rational response, your subconscious triggers the sting of shame, the flush of anger, the urge to defend. The delay between stimulus and conscious thought is often half a second or more. Plenty of time for the subconscious to set the emotional stage. By the time you decide how to respond, you are already influenced by signals that rose from beneath awareness. This is why psychologists often speak of automaticity, the phenomenon by which thoughts, emotions, and behaviors emerge automatically without deliberate control. Most of your routines are automatic. How you wash your hands, the route you take to work, the way you answer the phone, the words you say when you are surprised. Automaticity is efficient but dangerous if it traps you in patterns that no longer serve you. A person who has lived decades in self-doubt may continue to shrink from opportunity automatically, even when consciously desiring growth. The subconscious does not differentiate between constructive and destructive repetition. It simply encodes. This is why advertising is effective. Marketers know that by exposing you repeatedly to an image, a slogan, or a feeling, they can bypass conscious skepticism and lodge associations deep in the subconscious. Eventually, you feel a subtle preference for one brand over another, though you cannot explain why. The decision feels natural, but it was planted. Childhood is the most formative period because the subconscious is most impressionable. Between birth and around 7 years old, the brain operates largely in slower theta brainwave patterns, the same patterns adults enter during hypnosis or deep meditation. In this state, children absorb beliefs, emotional tones, and behavioral norms without critical analysis. If a child hears repeatedly, "You are smart, you can achieve anything," those words become part of the subconscious script. If a child hears, "You are lazy, you will never succeed," that too becomes embedded. Later, the adult may consciously disagree with those statements, but the subconscious will continue replaying them as default truths. This explains why personal change is so difficult. You're not only battling habits of action, but also ingrained subconscious beliefs that define what feels possible. A person who subconsciously believes they are unworthy will sabotage opportunities because the subconscious strives for consistency. It will bend reality to match the inner script. The autopilot does not want contradiction. It seeks confirmation. This is known as confirmation bias at the psychological level. You notice evidence that supports your subconscious beliefs and ignore evidence that challenges them. To break free, one must confront the subconscious not with force, but with strategy. Techniques such as neuro-linguistic programming, affirmations combined with visualization, mindfulness practices, and cognitive behavioral exercises aim to create new associations. Yet the process is not instant. The subconscious resists sudden upheaval because stability is safer than change. It must be trained gradually, with repeated exposure to new patterns until they become the new normal. Neuroscience offers insight into how this training works. Every habit is a circuit. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you practice a behavior or thought repeatedly, neural pathways strengthen through myelination, the insulation of connections that makes signals travel faster. This is why habits feel easier over time. But the reverse is also true. If you stop reinforcing a pathway, it weakens. Old fears can fade if they are not continually rehearsed. New beliefs can become automatic if they are practiced until the brain rewires itself. Consider someone learning public speaking after years of fear. At first, the subconscious triggers panic. But with gradual exposure, speaking to small groups, visualizing success, reframing failure as growth, the subconscious begins to build new associations. Eventually, standing before a crowd no longer triggers the old fear because the subconscious has updated its database. This situation is no longer dangerous. The autopilot adjusts. The subconscious also influences physiology in profound ways. Placebo effects reveal that beliefs, even when false, can trigger real biological changes. If a patient believes a pill will reduce pain, The subconscious signals the brain to release endorphins, creating genuine relief. The conscious mind may be deceived, but the subconscious acts as if the belief were true, reshaping reality through biology. This demonstrates the power of subconscious expectation. It is not a passive storehouse, but an active participant in creating experience. Dreams, too, reveal the depth of subconscious processing. While you sleep, your subconscious reorganizes memories, discards irrelevant information, and integrates emotional experiences. Dreams can replay fears, rehearse possible futures, or symbolize unresolved conflicts. Sometimes, the subconscious even offers solutions. Many scientific discoveries and artistic breakthroughs have arisen from dreams. Kekulé envisioning the structure of benzene, Paul McCartney hearing melodies in sleep, Einstein contemplating light as a child in his daydreams. The subconscious works tirelessly, even when you are unaware, making connections beyond the reach of deliberate reasoning. The more you study this hidden system, the clearer it becomes that autonomy is relative. You may believe you are the pilot, but much of your life is shaped by a silent co-pilot who rarely cedes control. The challenge is not to suppress this co-pilot, but to collaborate with it, to ensure the automation is aligned with conscious intention. Without that alignment, you drift on inherited programming, repeating cycles of fear, doubt, and limitation as if they were inevitable. With alignment, you harness the vast processing power of the subconscious, turning it into an ally. The question, then, is not whether life runs on autopilot. It does. The question is whether the autopilot serves you or sabotages you. Understanding the subconscious is the beginning of reclaiming authorship over your life. One of the most profound discoveries in psychology is that awareness itself begins to weaken the grip of subconscious patterns. When you observe an automatic reaction with clarity, you create a gap between stimulus and response. That gap allows choice. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies the power to choose and the freedom to grow. Awareness expands that space. Meditation, mindfulness, journaling, all are practices designed to illuminate the automatic, to bring hidden patterns into the light of consciousness. The subconscious thrives in darkness, in unawareness. When you make the unconscious conscious, you reduce its power. For instance, if you notice that you consistently react with anger when criticized, you can pause and trace the feeling back. Perhaps the subconscious has equated criticism with rejection since childhood. Seeing the origin breaks the illusion that anger is inevitable. It is not fate, but programming, and programming can be altered. Visualization is another powerful tool because the subconscious does not clearly distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and real ones. When athletes mentally rehearse a performance, their neural pathways fire in patterns nearly identical to physical practice. The subconscious encodes imagined success as if it had already occurred. This is why visualization, paired with emotion, can accelerate skill development and belief change. The key is to feel the imagined reality deeply, because emotion is the glue of memory. Rituals and repetition also matter. The subconscious learns through rhythm and consistency. Daily practices, affirmations, gratitude journaling, breathing exercises gradually reshape subconscious expectations. Even if change feels slow, repetition compounds. Just as drops of water carve stone, repeated suggestion carves new subconscious grooves. Over time, the autopilot begins steering toward gratitude instead of fear, confidence instead of doubt. Yet perhaps the most overlooked method of reprogramming the subconscious is environment. The people you surround yourself with, the spaces you inhabit, the media you consume, all of these provide constant input that shapes subconscious patterns. If you immerse yourself in negativity, criticism, or chaos, your subconscious absorbs it as normal. If you immerse yourself in encouragement, learning, and beauty, your subconscious adapts accordingly. Environment is not neutral. It is a constant sculptor of the hidden mind. The deeper truth is that the subconscious is not an enemy, but a mirror. It reflects back what has been consistently fed to it. If you feed it fear, it will echo fear. If you feed it trust, it will echo trust. The autopilot is not a prison. It is a tool, one that must be wielded with awareness. To deny its power is to be controlled by it blindly. To acknowledge its power is to begin shaping it consciously. The 95% figure is a reminder of humility. You are not as in control as you think. But it is also a reminder of potential. If such a vast portion of your life is governed by subconscious processes, then reshaping those processes can unlock transformation on a scale the conscious mind alone could never achieve. The conscious mind is the captain issuing commands, but the subconscious is the crew operating the ship. If they're not aligned, the ship will drift. If they're aligned, the voyage becomes unstoppable. Ultimately, to understand the subconscious is to confront the mystery of selfhood itself. Who are you? If most of you operates without awareness, are you the conscious narrator or the silent programs beneath? Perhaps you are both intertwined. Perhaps the task of life is not to abolish the autopilot, but to awaken enough to guide it wisely, to ensure that the silent governor serves growth, freedom, and love rather than fear, stagnation, and repetition. Every breath, every heartbeat, every reflex proves the subconscious is always at work. You cannot stop it, but you can shape it. To live unconsciously is to drift on old programming. To live consciously is to step into collaboration with the hidden mind. The autopilot is already flying. The choice is whether you sleep through the journey or awaken to guide the stars.